December 13th, 1945. Hamelin Prison, British-occupied Germany. Irma Grese, the Hyena of Auschwitz, is hanged for war crimes. She was 22 years old, the youngest woman executed under British jurisdiction in the 20th century. Most people assume she came from a family of fanatical Nazis, parents who raised her to be brutal, siblings who shared her ideology, a household steeped in hatred from the beginning. But here's what the history books leave out. Her mother killed herself when Irma was 12. Her father, a Nazi party leader, beat her with her own revolver when she came home wearing an SS uniform. And her sister testified under oath that Irma ran away from childhood fights. This isn't a story about a monster's family escaping justice or defending her memory. It's about how a family that was already broken produced one of history's worst female war criminals and then paid for it by vanishing completely from existence. The Grese family didn't scatter to Argentina like Mengele's relatives. They didn't spend decades defending their loved one like Gudrun Himmler. They didn't publicly reject her like the Speer children. They simply disappeared, every single one of them. No death certificates, no marriage records, no grave markers, no descendants coming forward decades later. This is the story of a family that was erased, whether by their own choice, by the chaos of Soviet occupation, or by something darker we may never fully understand. The tragedy that changed everything. In January 1936, when Irma was just 12 years old, her mother Berta found something out that shattered her world. Alfred Grese, Irma's father, was cheating on her. Instead of confronting him or walking away, Berta drank poison. She was only 32 years old. This piece of the story is almost never linked to what Irma became later, but it absolutely should be. The family didn't break apart after the war ended. It broke apart 10 years earlier. A young girl watched her mother choose death rather than face the shame of her father's betrayal. Whatever normal family life they had ended that January day. The suicide wasn't kept quiet. In a tiny village of just 175 people, secrets didn't stay secret. Young Irma grew up with neighbors who knew exactly how her mother died and why. The embarrassment, the whispered gossip, the looks of pity, the silent judgment, all of it became part of her childhood. Alfred didn't stay alone for long. By 1939, he married a widow who had 4 children of her own. Suddenly, Irma was fighting for attention in a household with 8 kids and a stepmother who had no special reason to care about her. She became an outsider in her own home even before the war started. The Grese family lived in Rieken, a village in Mecklenburg that was so tiny it only had 175 residents. Everyone knew everyone else. Everyone knew about Berta's suicide, and everyone watched as Alfred created a new family on top of the ruins of the old one. For Irma and her real siblings, Helene, Lisa, Alfred Jr., and Otto, the message was obvious. Their mother had been replaced, and so had they. The girl who ran from fights. Here's where the story takes a surprising turn. During the Belsen trial in 1945, Helene Grese, Irma's older sister, took the witness stand to talk about what kind of person her sister had been. What she said went against everything the prosecutors had claimed. "My sister never had the courage to fight," Helene told the court. On the contrary, she ran away. This was about the Hyena of Auschwitz, the woman who beat prisoners with a whip, who unleashed dogs on inmates, who chose victims for the gas chambers and seemed to enjoy it. According to her own sister, this same woman had been afraid of confrontation as a child, someone who avoided fights instead of starting them. This raises a question that's never been fully answered. How does a girl who runs from fights turn into a woman who causes suffering for fun? Did the concentration camp system create her? Did the uniform and total power corrupt someone who might have lived an ordinary life otherwise? Or did the camps just bring out something that was already inside her, waiting for the chance to show itself? Historians still argue about this. Some say all camp guards went through a process that made them brutal. They were gradually taught not to care about violence, rewarded for being cruel, and punished if they showed kindness. The SS didn't look for sadists. They created them through a careful process of destroying their sense of right and wrong. New guards who hesitated were mocked, punished, or moved elsewhere. Those who embraced violence got promotions and praise. Others argue that Irma actually wanted the job because it gave her an outlet for violent urges she'd been holding back since childhood. Maybe the girl who ran from fights was running from her own potential for violence, scared of what she might do if she ever stopped running. The camps gave her permission to finally stop. What we know for sure is that the change happened quickly. Irma joined the SS Auxiliary in 1942, making just 54 Reichsmarks each month. Within months, she'd earned a reputation for cruelty that stood out even among Auschwitz guards. Survivors remembered her specifically: her blonde hair, her whip, the smile on her face as she selected prisoners for death. Something about that place unlocked a capacity for violence that Helene swore had never been there before. The Nazi father who rejected what he'd made. Alfred Grese joined the Nazi Party in 1937. He climbed the ranks to become Ortsgruppenleiter, the local party leader for Recken, in a village of 175 people. This made him the most powerful person around. He organized rallies, made sure people stayed loyal to the party, reported neighbors who didn't show enough enthusiasm for the regime, and built his whole identity around National Socialism. By any measure, Alfred was a dedicated Nazi. He believed in the ideology. He benefited from the system. He raised his children under its influence. The party gave him purpose and importance in a way that being a dairy farmer never did. But when Irma came home in 1943, wearing her SS uniform, Alfred didn't congratulate her. He didn't celebrate his daughter serving the Reich. According to family testimony at the trial, something very different happened. During that visit, Irma ripped the head off her stepsister's doll, a mean, petty act of power over a child. It was the kind of casual cruelty that had become normal for her at Auschwitz, now brought home to the family table. Alfred's reaction was instant and violent. He grabbed Irma's own gun and hit her with it. The party man, who'd built his career on Nazi loyalty, somehow couldn't accept what his daughter had become. This contradiction haunted the family's fate after the war. Alfred wasn't secretly anti-Nazi. He wasn't having doubts about the regime. He just couldn't make sense of his ideology alongside the reality of his daughter's transformation. The camps were acceptable when they were abstract, even necessary for racial purity. His own child taking part in them was something completely different. It's a mental contradiction that showed up in many Nazi families: the ability to support a system of mass murder while being horrified when that system touched someone they loved. Alfred could be the Ortsgruppenleiter of Rechen, could enforce Nazi rules on his neighbors, could believe every word of party propaganda, and still be disgusted by the SS guard his daughter had become. The mental conflict never got resolved. It just sat there, poisoning whatever relationship was left between father and daughter. The sisters' desperate attempt. January 1945. The Soviet army is pushing through eastern Germany, and the Grese family is running west toward Lübeck with thousands of other refugees. The roads are packed with families carrying whatever they could grab: photographs, jewelry, warm clothes. Helene, now 20 years old, is somewhere in that chaos when she picks up a newspaper. That's how she found out the truth. Not from a letter, not from family, but from a newspaper article reporting her sister's arrest at Bergen-Belsen. "I was horrified," Helene later testified. "How was such a thing possible? How can it be true? I knew of no camps." The family had been deliberately kept in the dark. Whether Irma chose not to tell them, or whether the information just never made it to their small village, Helene's shock seems real in the trial records. She'd spent 3 years thinking her sister worked in some office job for the SS. She had no clue about the selections, the beatings, the systematic murder that Irma had been part of every single day. But Helene didn't turn her back on Irma. Instead, she made a choice that would mark her last appearance in history. She traveled to Lüneburg to find a lawyer for her condemned sister. It was a hopeless mission. The evidence against Irma was overwhelming. Survivors had pointed her out by name. Photos existed showing her in uniform at the camps. Her own words at trial, including the admission that Hitler is responsible for everything that has happened, but I suppose I am as much to blame as the others above me, would seal her fate. Helen's testimony at the Belsen trial tried to make her sister seem human, talking about the childhood fear, the family problems, the mother's suicide. She wasn't trying to excuse Irma's crimes. She was trying to explain them, to show the court that her sister had once been something other than a monster, that the change had a background, a history, a reason. It didn't matter. On December 13, 1945, Irma Grese was hanged alongside 2 other convicted war criminals. She was the youngest woman executed under British authority in the 20th century. The refugees who never got away. Helene's testimony at the Belsen trial gives us one of the only glimpses into the Grese family's final wartime months. She described refugee trains packed with families, with small children on their arms, dead. She described fleeing Rechin ahead of the Soviet advance, reaching Neustrelitz, and being caught by Russian forces before they could escape to the western zones. When the family finally returned to Rechin, they found their home had been looted. Only a few things remained, and their swastika flag, she noted, was still standing behind the door. That flag would become proof of Alfred's party membership, marking the family for what came next. This detail is important because of what it meant for their future. Rechin was now in the Soviet occupation zone, where denazification wasn't about rehabilitation, it was about punishment. In the American and British zones, the Allies sorted former Nazis into categories: major offenders, offenders, lesser offenders, followers, and exonerated persons. The process was inconsistent and often too lenient. Many former party members went back to normal life within a few years, but at least it created documentation. Records exist of who was tried, who was cleared, and who served time. The Soviets worked differently. Alfred's rank as Ortsgruppenleiter almost certainly triggered automatic classification as a major offender, meaning property seizure, employment bans, and possible imprisonment or forced labor. Many former Nazi officials in the Soviet zone were sent to special camps that had just months before held victims of the Nazi regime. Buchenwald and Sachsenhausen, emptied of concentration camp prisoners, filled up again with Germans accused of Nazi connections. The father who vanished. Here's where Alfred Grese's story becomes truly strange. He simply disappears from all historical records after 1945. No death certificate has ever been found. No denazification here in transcript. No mention in family trees or village records. No grave marker in any cemetery in the area. Whether he died in Soviet custody, escaped west under a fake name, or survived anonymously in the German Democratic Republic, no one knows. The man who led the Nazi party in Rechin disappeared as thoroughly as if he'd never existed. Given the chaos of the Soviet occupation, the mass arrests, the summary executions, the forced labor camps, his disappearance could mean almost anything. You might have died of disease in a cell. He might have been shot trying to run. He might have lived another 40 years under an assumed name in some West German city, never telling anyone about the daughter who'd been hanged at Hamelin. The uncertainty is permanent. Soviet zone records from this period are incomplete at best, deliberately destroyed at worst. Thousands of former Nazi officials simply vanished into that system, their fates never recorded or long since lost. A family wiped from history. Helene vanished too. She was 20 years old when she testified at the Belsen trial. Her testimony provided crucial psychological background for understanding Irma, the childhood, the transformation, the broken home, the mother's suicide. She tried to humanize her sister while acknowledging the horror of what she'd done. Then, after her testimony ended in late 1945, Helene Grese disappears from history just as completely as her father. Did she stay in East Germany, living under constant watch as the sister of a war criminal? Did she flee to the West and change her name to escape the connection? Did she marry and take a husband's name, burying her past so deep that even her children never knew? There is no record of her marriage, her death, or any part of her life after December 1945. The pattern holds for every member of the family. Irma had 4 other siblings: Lisa, Alfred Jr., Otto, and Hildegard, the youngest, born to the stepmother in 1939. Every single one vanished from historical records after the war. No burial records in Rechin or nearby villages. No name change applications in either German state. No immigration documents to other countries. The Grese family didn't just go quiet, they were erased, whether by their own choice or by the chaotic, often deliberately incomplete records of Soviet-occupied Germany. This isn't unique to them. East Germany's denazification focused on punishment over documentation, leaving thousands of perpetrator families' fates completely unrecorded. The cost of silence. The Grese family's story doesn't end with redemption or dramatic confrontation, but with absence. Unlike the Goerings, who remained visible for decades as Edda defended her father's memory in public, the Greses made no public statements. Unlike the Speers, who debated their patriarch's legacy in memoirs and interviews, no Grese ever came forward to discuss Irma. Unlike the Himmlers, where Gudrun spent her life defending her father, while her great-niece Katrin wrote books confronting the family's crimes, the Greses contributed nothing to the historical record after 1945. Irma's final letter to Helene, written in Hyena prison before her execution, offers a glimpse of how she wanted to be remembered. "We did not let our nerves be taken from us. We remained German and never became weak." But the family she left behind proved otherwise. They didn't remain German in any public sense. They didn't remain anything at all. They simply disappeared, leaving historians to wonder whether their silence was punishment or escape. Maybe Alfred died in the Soviet camp, another victim of the post-war settling of scores. Maybe Helene fled west and built a life under a different name, never telling her children about the sister who'd been hanged at Hamelin. Maybe the younger siblings, scattered across both Germanys, their connection to Irma buried so deeply that even their own descendants never learn the truth. We don't know. We may never know. What we do know is that the broken home that produced the Hyena of Auschwitz, the mother's suicide, the father's violence, the blended family's dysfunction, ended not in justice or reconciliation, but in complete erasure. The Greses paid for their proximity to one of history's worst war criminals with something that might be worse than punishment: total disappearance from human memory. The monster was hanged. The family simply ceased to exist. Thanks for watching. If you found this video insightful, check out our other deep dives into the families who lived in the shadow of the Third Reich. Like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss our next upload.